Hey, everybody, welcome to the How to Succeed podcast. This is How to Succeed at Understanding Pain with Emily Shaw, a Sandler trainer from Indianapolis. I am Mike Montague, head coach at Sandler, and you can find Sandler at Sandler.com. We made it real easy for you if you're looking for leadership training, sales development, customer success, or customer service training. We are your peoples. You can find a local office or reach out to our enterprise team at Sandler.com. And as always, we're going to try to help you get to the top and stay there. This is How to Succeed at Understanding Pain. Emily, welcome to the podcast. Tell me a little bit about this concept of pain and what are we talking about today?
Yeah, so it feels a little silly for me to tell the head coach at Sandler about pain, but I'll do my best. So pain is someone's emotionally compelling reason to do business with you or to change from what they're currently doing to something else, right? And I have this feeling, and I've heard it from time to time, as pain is described sort of as a qualification tool. And you have to get pain or you have to put them in pain, and no pain, no sale. And it's very much through the lens of how pain impacts the salesperson's sales process and closing rate. And I think it would be better served as a conversation to better understand how pain actually benefits the prospect, as opposed to focusing on, us as salespeople.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of common myths and misconceptions here, which is not unusual. David Sandler worked with a clinical psychologist named Al Luco back in the 60s to invent the concept of pain in selling and the pain funnel questions that we go through. And I think even then he had kind of talked about like a doctor's analogy of taking somebody from well to sick to critical and then performing a miracle to put them back together and make them healthy. But even then, I think people misunderstood that as maybe inflicting pain or you're putting them in pain, like you said, rather than uncovering pain and motivations that they already have and helping people understand their reasons for buying and helping us understand their reasons for buying so that we can solve the real problem. So there's so much to unpack here. I'm glad we got 25 minutes here or so to do that. Let's start with what you think the most common mistakes are with pain when you're working with your clients.
Number one, I would say, is the check the box mentality as far as sales process goes. And so it's like, I need to get pain. So I'll ask all of these very direct pain funnel questions, and not really make them relevant to the prospect or show really any real sense of curiosity. But I'm just getting pain to get pain because I know if I get pain, I'm more likely to close this deal.
Sometimes with that, I don't want to interrupt you there, but they even check the box too early. So we see people go, oh, they said they want to grow their business. So done. We did pain. Check.
Got it. Moving on. Yeah. Yes. And if we were to truly embody the definition of someone's emotionally compelling reason to do something, I don't even know that it should be do business with you. I think that our responsibility as salespeople, as professionals, should be to help these people uncover A, whether they should be doing anything at all, and B, what the best solution is for them, regardless of whether that's us or something else. And I think the tactic and technique would probably be more effective if we honed in on that as its main outcome and objective. So having these surface level conversations, blowing past it too soon, is not helping your prospect. That's like if you, if your best friend said, "Hey, Mike, I know it's noon on a Thursday, but I need you to meet me at the bar. I've got something really important to talk to you about." You're like, "Okay, this is weird." And you show up though, because you are a great friend, and you sit down and someone says, "I'm going through a really tough time. I think that I'm going to sell all my belongings. I'm going to just disavow my family, and I'm going to move to the middle of nowhere in Western Africa. And this is the last time we're going to speak." And you said, "Wow, tell me about that." I said, "Yeah, well, I've made this decision and this is how I'm feeling. I'm feeling really overwhelmed. It's too much." And you go, "Okie dokie. Well, Godspeed on your journey. Like that's not truly invested in that conversation. And you would never do that because you genuinely care about that person. You would want to know what these motivators were. You would have some curiosity about how they got there. You'd care about how they were feeling. And you don't have to treat prospects like your best friends, but I do think we should be good stewards of the information that they are willing to share with us and help them get down a path for clarity, because clarity brings energy. And if we want people to be feeling equipped to make a decision, we should equip them with clarity to do so.
Yeah, that kind of brings to mind our ethical selling model started by Jody Williamson, right? That it's
Mm-hmm.
unethical to sell somebody something they don't need, but it's also unethical to just let it go. If it's something that
Yes.
is going to help them and change their world or relieve a pain for them, we have it in our duty to help them relieve that pain and to do everything we can and ask all the questions we can to help make sure they realize it.
And that's a perfect segue into, I think, the second thing that we probably see most often with pain and someone's approach to pain is obviously one, just checking it as a box on okay, I did it, and making it very transactional. But two is knowing that I should go deeper, but choosing not to because that conversation makes me feel uncomfortable.
Mhm.
Because what if they don't like the conversation? What if they think it's weird? What if they think I'm going too deep? And both of those, missteps when it comes to pain are self-focused, not prospect-focused. Which I think we could tie everything up in a bow and say the biggest problem when approaching pain is that a seller is focused on self as opposed to their prospect.
Yeah, I think there's something interesting there that when you get to the bottom of the pain funnel, that's not the time to like end the meeting and be like, well, see you last time. Like we do have to put them back
Yeah,
together a
that
little bit.
sucks.
We got to give them a way out of that pain and show them that solution and check their commitment to doing something about it. Just because people
Yes.
have pain sometimes, I think doesn't mean that they want to get rid of it or they trust you to get rid of it yet. And there's still a
Mhm.
lot of conversation left, right?
Yes, absolutely. And we could get into how do we actually build trust, and I do think that one of the best ways to build trust in a sales process is to actually get pain. If you are providing a psychologically safe place for this person to be vulnerable enough with you to tell you they have problems within their business, they have problems amongst their team members, and ultimately how it's impacting them personally, that's the ultimate form of bonding and rapport. But if you're going to miss the mark on that, though, if you're just focused on checking boxes to qualify something in CRM or
Mhm.
avoiding it altogether because you think it's an awkward and uncomfortable conversation. You've done a disservice even to the relationship between you as a seller and them as a buyer.
Now, I'm going to ask you a hard one here,
Mm.
and I think we need to clarify the difference between pain and gain. And that I think another common mistake I see is that people go, "Well, I sell vacations or something like that's not really a pain scenario,"
Yeah.
or I think they don't really realize that wanting something really bad, like growing your business, it can be a pain too, or the absence of a
Mhm.
gain is a pain. And it gets kind of confusing when we start talking about these terms of really what it is. Can you help us define maybe a little bit better of how we know when we've gotten to the right level of pain and what to do with it then, or how sometimes this can be hidden from even the buyer? They might not know what their real motivation is, and how do we handle those situations?
I think first and foremost, you need to be aware of what your pain indicators are as a seller and for your product service, whatever it is, right? Going in and hoping that the prospect is going to help you figure those things out might be a little too much pressure on the prospect. I would think you'd be somewhat prepared with knowing what the common reasons are people buy from you, right? Um, and the difference between pain and gain, the first first thing that you brought up, there's not a lot of difference. And maybe it's because we're Sandler trainers that we are able to see the inverse of the lack of gain. But even if someone is selling vacations and they're saying that there's not a lot of pain. Well, the pain is that they're not currently on vacation. Probably,
True. I feel
um,
that pain today. Yeah.
I very much so right now, yes. Or that they're not going on enough of them, or that they're not going on the right kind of them, or that it's not catered to the entirety of their family, or their teenagers are bored, or they're wasting money on not having something prepared and showing up and being disenchanted by the vacation that they're going on. So I think it's probably very easy for us to turn that around because we talk about it all day long. I think if someone is listening in wondering, what is the pain that I solve for? It is what is missing from the equation. Even if you are selling on gain, or you are selling, someone can have something in the future. It's not necessarily solving an obvious problem. You just look at what's missing and the loss there. And I think from a compelling perspective, we always teach people that pain in the present is more compelling than pain in the
Mm.
future, or gain in the future. So how can you bring the future to the present? Speaking of Sandler and Sandler rules, how can you create that perspective for them so that they're with you in that conversation? Is that making sense?
Yeah, I like that. And I think we've already moved into the behavior bucket here a little bit with pain indicators and those different types of pain. But I always find it interesting to do the right thing at the right time in a sales call. And I think we've already hinted at this is probably an upfront discussion. Like if we don't get pain, it doesn't matter how much our products or services do, or how much they cost, or any of those things. If they're not interested, if you're trying to sell me hair care products, we're not going to get very far, right? So
Right.
can you help us a little bit with the timing of when this conversation takes place, maybe how long it typically takes place, or how we make sure we're doing the right thing and spending enough time and energy in pain?
Yeah, I don't know that there's a exact timing for how long it should take, right? Everyone's a little different. We know we've got multitudes of different disc profiles and different ways that people are hardwired. How quickly someone opens up might be longer than somebody else. But I think when someone is talking about how their issue is personally and emotionally impacting them, you've gotten there. And I don't think you need to hang out there for very long, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think you need to talk about
Mm.
every single facet. We don't want someone crying on your sales calls. But I think when someone has expressed to you from a place of authenticity, hey, Mike, yeah, that's a great question. Here's how it's showing up for me. I'm frustrated. They're using words that have emotional context. They're painting scenes for you and pictures for you. They're giving you examples of the last time they felt that way or experienced that feeling. I think it's safe to say you've gotten there, but expecting that it happens at minute 38 for everybody is a
Mhm.
dangerous game to play, because we've got quadrants that aren't quite as comfortable with vulnerability as some others.
I like that a lot. And it brings up the question for me. I'm wondering if you have a specific example of either the easiest time it was to find pain, or the hardest time you ever had finding pain. I remember one time I talked to a high D leader and I just said, like, why are we here, as my first question. And he talked for the next 45 minutes, did not stop, laid out everything, talked about the solutions, the budget, the pain, how upset he was with what was going on with the sales team and all kinds of stuff.
Yep.
And I just kind of sat there smiling and nodding for 45 minutes and then was like, well, what would you like to do next? And
Yes.
we're
Those
moving
are
on.
awesome. Love when that
Um,
happens.
they are
And
fun,
so,
but I
yeah, I
can
think
think of other
probably the
times where
right
I couldn't get them to see it. It was right in front of their face, and I asked every question I could, and they just didn't realize that they were the problem or that they had problems.
well, and in what we do, articulating out loud that you are the problem can be very challenging for people. And there may be a time when someone is capable of sharing that with you at some point, and you may not be currently in that trajectory of that timeline, right? That
Mm.
maybe they need 6 months more of getting these outcomes before they're ready to say, okay, it's me. Or they've got more evidence and impact to share that with you. But I think and I don't love to pigeonhole disc profiles, but traditionally it's been a little easier to get there with D's and I's than it is S's and C's in my case. Now that could be because of my own profile. But our more reserved friends hold things a little closer to the vest a little longer. And in particular, some people who are very analytical and data focused don't rush into conversations about emotional vulnerability. So it might take a little bit longer, but I think the tendency to want to expedite that conversation because you need pain turns people off, and you have to meet people
Yeah.
where they are and walk hand in hand with them, giving them the illusion, right, that they're in control of the conversation, but knowing where you're going. But meeting them where they are and matching and mirroring and not trying to rush through and check the box and say that you did it is probably a kiss of death for no matter what quadrant you're in.
Yeah, and I think that brings us to technique here. We've mentioned a few that we should probably define, like pain indicators and pain funnel
Mhm.
and stuff, and even some of those different types of pains. And I'm thinking also the levels of pain. So this is complicated. We don't need to teach everything there is to know about pain.
The
That's why
calculus of pain today. Yeah.
we have like 4 different 90-minute classes just on this one
Yep.
topic here. But where would you like to start? Where do you feel like we could make the biggest difference for maybe somebody that's never experienced Sandler or a good pain
Yeah.
conversation before?
I think most simplistically, looking at the levels of what, why, and impact is probably helpful for
Mhm.
folks who don't have the full tool belt of Sandler at their disposal at the moment. So, it's something that you hear often when you first start with clients, like, oh, I know what pain is. Oh, I know what pain points are. And typically what people are talking about is the what, and you referred to it earlier as this is the problem. Great. I know the pain point. I will now move on. And Sandler teaches that really no one takes action unless they have articulated the impact that that problem is having on them personally. And so there are levels. The first level that's easiest to get to is the what. And I'd say 99% of sellers probably get to the what because prospects show up ready to share that as a logical progression to their conversation. Why that thing is a problem or why they'd like to fix it, why now is another layer that we'll say 50% of people likely organically get to. But the impact that that situation is having on both the business and that person personally seems to be a very small percentage of people that are doing that effectively without training and without guidance. And that's really where the actual urgency to take action comes. And I think if we even think about our own lives, if we've had some really challenging decision to make, what was the thing that made you take action? It was that it was deeply impacting you in some emotional context. How we think about other decisions we've had to make, and we've remained on either side of the fence for 6 months, and we're not sure what to do, and there's confusion, there's like a clarity. Well, it's probably not impacting you emotionally as much as the other one was. Or to your point earlier, you're unaware of how much it is impacting you emotionally or sticking your head in the sand and not wanting to recognize how much it's impacting you because the decision is hard. And so getting to impact creates just a path for a prospect to say, wow, either I didn't realize this was impacting me this much, or I feel much better at least having articulated it to someone. I've out loud said, yes, this is causing me mental tax or dollars, actual tax. Who knows? But I'm done dealing with it and I'm committed to doing something about it. And thank you for guiding me through this conversation because that's very clear to me now.
And other than the pain funnel questions and stuff that people could get in the material, do you have a favorite way to make it conversational and in your personal selling, a favorite question to start the conversation or to end the conversation or get a
Yeah.
level deeper in the middle somewhere?
So now we're getting into dangerous territory because I'm going to bring in another tactic. And I think the easiest way to get pain is to have a great upfront contract.
Hmm.
Um, my upfront contract starts with if we were sitting down together, I would say, okay, Mike, I appreciate the fact that you've put an hour on the calendar with me today. Um, this is obviously going to come to an end. And when you are logging off or walking out of here and you're thinking, wow, I'm really glad I had that conversation with Emily. It was super productive. What do we talk about? Right? Or what will make this conversation a productive use of your hour? What's going to be important for me to cover? And then they give you all of their pain indicators there, and you just pick
Mm.
one and ask, tell me about that. Why that one? It's pretty simple. So no flashy techniques or Jedi mind tricks over here.
Yeah, I think that's really one of my favorites too. That's what I was thinking. The tell me more about that seems to work in my personal life, in podcast interviews and sales interviews, wherever I
Yep.
am, and just be like, that sounds important. Tell me more about that.
Hmm.
And people expand and tell you more, and usually give you something to latch on to for a follow-up question as well. I would say one of the other ones that's tricky for me, and I didn't learn it until I was watching another Sandler trainer on a call, but getting them to quantify the pain is another part that's important in the middle there. So if they go, none of my sellers can, close the door. They can't sell anything. And you go, well, none of them? You don't have anybody selling anything on your team? Like how many? You got 10 people. How many of them would you say are actually bad at that? Or how many deals are falling off the table? And they go, well, all of them. Well, all of them's not a number. Give me like what? How much? How many? How big are these deals? How often is it happening? And getting really specific, I think, in these questions really helps you sound like an expert, that you know what you're talking about. It helps them quantify and think through. And I was working with it was Big Brothers Big Sisters, actually, that I was on a call with one of the other trainers, and they work with thousands of people and leaders and coaches and big brothers and big sisters around the country. And you go, well, how many of them would you say do a good job of asking questions or listening skills or something like that? And you have to start thinking about it then and go a level deeper when you ask the quantification questions.
Which is another form of helping your prospect gain clarity to determine what it is that they need to do to solve the problem. And so thinking about quantification as another way that you're going to help someone cut through the smoke. Because we can go back to those really big decisions we've had to make in our personal lives. It's pretty easy from a cognitive bias standpoint to dismiss some information as no big deal, or I'll deal with that tomorrow. Or
Yeah.
we've got this dismissive bias on, well, it's probably only happened a couple times. And then you go back and you're like, oh, it's happened 19 times. Okay. Right? Once you've realized that, it's a lot easier to confidently make a decision. And when I think about people being elusive, I think sometimes sellers think, oh, prospects just don't want to give me pain. They don't want to tell me things. They don't want to be vulnerable. That could be for sure. But it could be that this is a really challenging fix for them and it's going to require a lot of work. And they've got some hesitancy and concern that they're going to make the wrong decision,
Yeah.
um, or that it's going to take so much, or they're going to tax so many people with the overhaul that everyone's going to be mad at them. There's so many things that could be going on that um, none of which have anything to do with you as a salesperson, likely, and how they feel about you as a salesperson. But again, that I just find that that language even is salespeople focused on themselves again, right? These people don't want to tell me, no. How could you show up for these people and help them, get through that for even just themselves? I tell my prospects often, the worst thing for you to come out of this process with is not hiring me. The worst thing for you here is making no decision at all and doing nothing. So my job is to help you gain clarity enough to make a decision so that you're not stuck here anymore. And if that's me and I'm blessed enough to help you, great. If it's not, that's okay too. My goal is to make sure you get what you need and you're not stuck any longer.
I love that. And I think it's a good place to start wrapping up here a little bit, but I wanted to give you
Yeah.
one more shot at it. Um, Anything else you wanted to share today that I didn't ask, or could you help us, help tell us maybe what happens after you find pain, if we've done it?
Yeah, much like you, right? If I find pain, it's just, what would you like to do next? I think giving people agency over the decision making process with guidance, right? You got to be careful with that because sometimes people just don't know how to buy you. They don't know the most effective way to buy you. Again, this is another place for you to show up and make sure that they are getting what they actually need, and you're showing up as their coach, therapist, consultant, however you want to look at that, helper through that process. Because a lot of people are trying to buy you or I or anybody else listening to this podcast in the same manner that they buy things from Costco or something online, and it's very transactional. And most sellers have more complex processes than what we're sort of used to in our daily lives. So you do have to show up and sort of guide them if they make the wrong choice, but definitely collaborate with them on what those next steps need to be.
Sounds good. Once again, we've been talking with Emily Shaw, Sandler trainer from Indianapolis, and you've been around the network here for a while, award-winning Sandler trainer and having success in this business. So congratulations on that. But I'm wondering at this point in your career, how you define success for yourself.
This isn't going to be shocking to you after this conversation, but helping more people. Success to me is, yes, you have to be cognizant of the numbers and set goals so that you're constantly stretching and challenging yourself. But I think we have the luxury of being in a business where we get to also count number of lives impacted. And that's really the most important marker to me as far as success goes. So that's what the measurement is largely.
I like it. Now, I like to ask the opposite question. Was there a biggest failure you are most proud of, or a particularly hard lesson for you to learn throughout your Sandler journey?
So many hard lessons to learn. So I'm probably very passionate about this in regard to making it about other people, because it was a lesson I had to learn. When I first came into this business, I was like, okay, I need to know more than everybody else knows. I need to be the expert. I need to show up in training with this sort of swagger and confidence that, reduces someone's desire to ask me a question, because I was so terrified that someone would ask me a question. And it was so hard, and it was so much pressure. And once I started realizing that if I just made it about helping people, if I stopped making it about what people would think of me or their perception of me, if I was an expert, if I was a guru and all of those things, if I just focused on helping people, A, it was much easier, but B, it was so much more rewarding. So, I would say that's probably why I'm so passionate about this topic in general, is because I had to learn it the hard way.
Yeah, I like that one. I found out about Sandler young, and my dad was a Sandler trainer, and I passed up the opportunity to work with him in my 20s because I thought, like, I'm a 20-year-old kid. What am I going to know or prove? Or I'm not a guru yet. I haven't had a professional selling job or anything. And it wasn't until much later when I realized, oh, that's not the job. The job is helping them realize what they're doing, and that they're not focusing on sales. They're not gurus either, and stuff. And how can I help them? And it's an amazing lesson to learn. And I think an important one to share with everybody, but especially young people. Last one. Do you have a favorite Sandler rule, concept, or thought for us?
And keeping theme with our episode, I would say sales is a Broadway performance put on by a psychiatrist. There are many hats to be worn in a sales conversation, but you can create an engaging experience for your prospect with your psychiatrist hat on, of uncovering the problem, caring enough about that person, and helping them find the solution. Sales is a lot more fun to be a part of.
Yeah, I love that metaphor too. You're not the star of the play here. Your buyer is the star. You're the director, which is a different.
You create the environment, the experience, and invite them into it. Absolutely.
Emily, thank you so much for being on the show. If you want to reach out to her, connect on LinkedIn or go to Sandler.com and find her and her location in Indianapolis there. Also, you can find our enterprise team. If you work with a large organization, have hundreds of sellers or multiple languages or countries, you can do that there as well. But we also have over 200 local offices working with individuals and small and medium-sized businesses too. So don't hesitate to reach out. Subscribe to this podcast if you haven't already. Send it to somebody that you think needs to hear it. And until next time, whatever you are, be a good one. That's what I always say. We'll see you next time, everybody. Have a great week.